Ayo, check, check. Chuffy 1, Chuffy, check. Chuffy 1, 2. Feet, check. Chuffy 1, 2. Okay, we're rolling, rocking and rolling. I would like to say, first thing, if you notice, if you ever hear me say this, if you pick up the mic going, Nigel's good at it. Nigel always says, the rest of you, it's my fault, of course. I've got a wire, it leads into the mixing desk. It's the microphone. I think maybe because I've dropped this microphone a number of times and it's in this cradle, that there's some little point, if I mess with it, it'll go, get a little sound sound issue. If it happens, tell me, because I'm not listening to the sound of my own voice. Sound issue. If I want to listen to the sound of my own voice, I have to have it playing like that. Sound of my own voice. Sound issue. And then we've got an issue with this. Sound of my own voice. I have to have it playing like that. Sound of my own voice. And this is all getting confusing. And then we've got an issue with this. Sound of my own voice. I have to have it playing. I can't have this. So instead, I turn that off. I don't listen to it in my headphones. I listen to the relaxing game music in my headphones. If it goes, just let me know. Just let me know. I'll fix it. If I'm out of sync, let me check that. I'll fix it. I'm not out of sync. I'm okay. That's why we do this at the start of every broadcast, so that I can put it in sync in an edit if I choose to edit it if it goes out of sync. The last broadcast was all out of sync. It was either YouTube, lagging or something, or it was me being out of sync, because sometimes the thing goes out of sync just through a glitch and I have to turn off the camera and turn it back on again and it works. So if that ever happens as well, if I ever look out of sync, you just tell me in chat, you just say, look, you're out of sync. You're going, let me know. I'll endeavour to improve the setup so these things are idiot-proof. But, until then, being an idiot, I'm going to make these little mistakes, and it's just going to happen sometimes. So let me know. I won't feel bad. I'll see it as an opportunity to improve myself. So that's all good in the hood. What are we talking about tonight? It's 8 PM GMT. It's Mental Health Monday. I'll do the introduction. Hi, you're with Scott. I'm Ganja Kid. I'm also Grave Kipper, but I'm going to turn that off because it's inappropriate for what we're talking about now. So I'm just going to turn that off. And it's Mental Health Monday. It's 8 PM GMT. This is your right ear. This is your left ear. I'll calm down a bit. I'll chill out a bit. I'm laughing, I'm joking. We're talking about suicide. So if you think, you're deeply affected by that and you think, hang on, why is he joking and laughing about when this is a really serious thing and I'm really feeling down? If you're considering suicide, consider living. Consider fighting it out another day, another couple of days, maybe just, to the end of the week, and then we'll see where we get from there. Maybe we can do another week. Maybe we can turn it into a month. Maybe we can just keep eking out, and not give in. Maybe we can hold on with everything that's in you. The will that says hold on. 116-123. That's a phone line. Free. Talk to somebody. Lifeline. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline in the USA. 1-800-273-8255. It's a free phone. 988. Bit like the emergency number. 988 there. Free phone. Get on that. Give them a call. I'm feeling down. I was considering this. I'm thinking about that. Just needed someone to talk to and set my mind in order. Give them a call, because I'm going to make some jokes and I'm going to be chuffing along, and it's the internet, and I'm streaming on an old Twitch stream, and I'm talking about ethics. Dr. K, Reckful. We started last week. It came up because of Our Place, this tribute to Byron that was created on the internet phenomenon that is Our Place. Mosaic tiles, community groups come together. Big canvas. This is a small part of the canvas. This was the little square tribute to Reckful. Byron Reckful Bernstein, who was a streamer. I'm not going to go into his backstory and history because we did a little bit of it at the start of last episode. I refer you to the video of YouTube if you want to having a little look at Reckful Reacts documentary. If you just do that, Reckful Reacts documentary. Reckful reacts to the Reckful documentary with chat from Slush Extras, and the actual Slush documentary are both really good start points if you've never heard of Byron or Reckful or anything. It's nice that he reacts to his own story. He does skip over some parts, so if you want the full story, you watch the full Slush documentary, or you have it open in a browser window so you can watch those bits when he skips them. But it's nice to see his own reaction to the story told of him. So That's nice. It's interesting. Because of all this thing came up. The little bit of backstory is Dr. K. Dr. K is on the internet. Dr. K is Healthy Gamer. Dr. K is a medical health trained, where am I, web browser. Dr. K is Harvard educated psychologist offering medical style mental health support through the prism of the internet, YouTube and Twitch. He was doing one-to-one conversations with people, talking to them about their difficulties, their problems, offering YouTube videos and other stuff. Talked to some of the really big people. Look, talked to Asmongold, talked to Moist Critical, talked to Reckful, and at no point set himself. Although he is dealing with the complex and difficult conversations about mental health, he makes it clear, and this is what we just discussed last week, is that he made it clear that he was not a therapist. This is not therapy. That's what we were looking at last week, because this fella, Mr. Girl, made a video about a month ago, February, Valentine's Day, and it was a critique on Dr. K's relationship with people, with streamers, with people he's talking to online, specifically Reckful, quite prominently, because Byron killed himself. Through their conversations, through their weeks of conversations, it looked like Byron was doing better. It looked like he was turning a bit of a positive corner. Things didn't work out that way. And some of the critique, I'm not saying the blame is being laid at Dr. K. You'd have to watch last week's episode because last week we looked at the therapist-patient relationship. Me personally, I don't think Dr. K is responsible for Reckful's suicide, and I don't think he was necessarily negligent in his treatment of, not treatment in terms of a medical sense, in the way he behaved towards Byron. I don't think he was that negligent. I think he did a good thing. I think he worked hard to be a friend to Byron, made it clear where the lines were drawn, and tried his hardest to help Byron, and was probably the person that came closest to saving Byron, even if he didn't succeed. So I have a lot of respect for Dr. K and his work on the internet. I think he's done a really good job. I think he created, where there was a void, he, created a presence and raises really important conversations and offers some actual actionable advice. He can be a portal to that next step to getting yourself actual therapy or whatever. But at no point does he sort of sell a sort of, I'm not aware of, I know they do coaching. I think this is to try and offer that, wider support. But he's not sort of come out with like the Dr. K t-shirt and book combo and, watch my 6 videos to make yourself rich and Chad, super giga Chad. He's just somebody who understands he understands the gamer and, the landscape of Twitch, and he is in the right place at the right time to help people with his wisdom, understanding, and in my opinion, good nature. So but the critique is sort of slightly different. It's different to what I've just said. Last week we looked at the therapist-patient relationship, and we did a big video on it, and we talked about it. You can see that on our own. If you want to find out where my old videos are, then you go on YouTube, you type in Ganji Kid. I can't even spell it. It's all one word like that with 2 Ds. Ganji Kid Dodo. And that's us. There we are. Look. That's us. And all the streams are part of the uploads or the stream archive. We upload everything to this channel. All the unedited, unfiltered, totally raw. Everything's there. So the Reckful last week, there it is. Talking Dr. K Reckful and Ethics of Online Therapy. That's last week's Mental Health Monday. It's there. I haven't edited it for the actual Mental Health Monday channel because we haven't even finished talking about this and I don't know how it fits as an edit. But we've also got a channel called Mental Health Monday where we edit what we do today on stream into hopefully monthly. We were doing weekly, but hopefully monthly videos that can help people with direct mental health problems and offer a portal to that next step, whether it be something specific, care advocacy in Ireland, something general, the depression you feel when watching the news about Ukraine, something specific if you're isolated at Christmas, how to get through, something general, ancient mental health opinions. We come up with some ideas, we talk about things. That's what you know what's going on there. These are the edits. So all this stuff that I'm saying now, all this chuff, I edit it off and you just get the main bit. Mental Health Monday, a channel on YouTube of support and content to help. That's what we're about. So I'm not Dr. K. I'm not a qualified Harvard, anything like that. I'm just somebody who's been through a bit of the system, knows a bit of the stuff, and has done a bit of the research. We do it like we're doing today on stream together, and then we put it together as a resource to try and help people. And that's because we've got a YouTube channel of another variety where people were turning up. We're doing ASMR on another channel, and people were turning up and saying, oh, I'm really anxious and ASMR helps with my anxiety. So we started to help them with their anxiety and their mental health as well, not just by doing the ASMR. So that's why we do that. That's why we're here today. It's a regular Monday, 8 p.m. GMT, Mental Health Monday. And that set the scene for continuing what we're talking about. We've talked about the therapist-patient relationship, and the critique is online, you're not going to be doing the therapy. You're not going to be helping these people online. You need to do a proper therapy. And so don't give them all false hope that they're in therapy, because they're not. And a lot of these streamers were like, oh, it's like therapy. And he said, it's not therapy. And they said, oh, it's still like therapy though, isn't it? And it's hard to get that idea out of their head, and it's hard to know where the lines are drawn, and they were discussing them. Hopefully today we will get through informed consent, the critique, confidentiality, bartering. There's quite a lot here, you see. There's quite a lot. Hopefully we'll get through some more of it. And I'd like to be able to look at, Dr. K has responded with a video about ethics. So I'd like to be able to get into his response. It might be another week next week before we get that, but that's where we're headed with this. And then finally, after we've looked at all this context, we will alight again on suicide prevention at the very end, because that's the main thing. That's the main thing. So with all that said, let's push on with our discussion about informed consent and therapy. I'm not offering therapy. I'm offering mental health support. Dr. K is quite clear to say he's not offering therapy. We talked about that last week, but it's a bit more... with Dr. K, I will concede that it looks a bit more... Sorry, I've gone the wrong way on my button there. It looks a bit more professional, and it feels a bit more therapeutic, because he's a lot better at it than I am, and he is a good professional. And I can see why the layperson might come to one of his streams and say, oh, look, there's a therapist talking to not a client, but a streamer, and giving them, mental health advice. It looks a bit like a therapy session. I can see why people felt like that. So I understand that. And I know that even though Dr. K is careful to qualify it, those ideas float around. So let's get on with it, eh? Let's get on with it. And let me just check that I'm not going... So let's get on with it, eh? Let's get on with it. And let me just check that I'm not going... Yeah. So 1, 2, check, Chuffy, 1, 2. And let me just check that I'm not going... Yeah. 1, 2, check, Chuffy, 1, 2. Yeah, I'm happy, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Okay.
Informed consent. Psychiatrists should recognize the importance of informed consent for assessment or treatment as an essential means to recognition of and respect for the patient's autonomy and personhood.
Informed consent is a complicated process that...
I'd like to just say quickly, briefly as well, sorry, I've done a lot of chatting already, but I would like to also quickly say that this sort of kicked off as a little bit of a drama. We'll say a drama, a debate between people, a drama. Someone made a video against Dr. K, and the Dr. K supporters said this, and the people that agreed with the video said that, and there's a debate and a drama, and then they've had discussions about it. I'm not involved in any of that. I don't want to be involved in any of that. I'm not coming to this on the button a month ago when it was happening at the peak of the drama to stick my oar in. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to discuss mental health support in an online context through this very interesting and carefully constructed debate, argument, video that discusses the ethical issues. I think it's a really good video that discusses the ethical issues. Okay, it's edited to make Dr. K look bad. Okay, it's a bit of a hit piece on Dr. K, and I don't feel that same sentiment, but I do think it's a good conversation to have. And I think what it led to from Dr. K was also a good conversation in response. So let's carry on.
Once again, we have to rely on professionals to understand. When a situation is blurry, it by itself makes sure that the client is not crystal clear, and they don't know where the process and the conversation or the relationship is going. And so how can they agree to something where they don't know what is happening and what's going on? So
okay, so what we're saying is I think what we're saying is that Dr. K comes to these people, or they come to Dr. K quite often, or there's the chat connects them up. But, you know, you're a bit of a mental health helper, aren't you, Dr. K? Dr. K. Yes, I am. I'm not a therapist and I can't do therapy, but, you know, we can have a conversation about your mental health and we can have a conversation about topics. And when something specific comes up, like depression or something, I can give a bit of a read about depression, and I won't say you're depressed, but I can tell the audience about depression if it's come up as a topic, for example. Or if, you know, you mention OCD, I can say, oh, OCD, did you know that OCD, this and this? I'm not diagnosing you, yeah? But this informed consent of the idea that all that is known to the person coming to the conversation and that they're aware of all these other angles. So I get that's what we're sort of saying, isn't it? Making sure they know where the lines are drawn, and they're saying you can't, if you're the client or you're the person in the conversation, not the professional, you don't know where the lines are drawn because you don't even know where the line's drawn. Do you know what I mean? Are we having a chat? Are you my friend? Are you a doctor? If you're a doctor and you say something about mental health, should I take that as a diagnosis? You're a doctor? No, we just have no, I'm not in my doctor's hat. I'm just in my friend's hat. I can't see which hat you've got on. I don't know. In my mind, it's a blur. So making sure they know. Yeah, I get where we're broaching here. I see the issue.
The therapist needs to be the one that says, here's where we're going to go. This is how we're going to go. And this is what we're going to do. Is that okay with you? And if so, I need your informed consent. Informed is a very important part of consent, that they clearly understand the process. Otherwise, once again, we're back to you may be doing harm.
Something that we discussed last week was that Dr. K has these human traits that he's polished up that we all have. Empathy, the ability to listen to someone, the ability to care and be compassionate. But he's also got a few techniques, we could say, that he's learned through education about asking open-ended questions, active listening. And he uses the things he's learned about how to talk to people in his daily life when he talks to people, because he's a human being. Someone taught me to say please and thank you and to not talk over people. So I don't talk over people. It's not a clever technique I'm using. It's just, you know, I was taught to do this. I believe that in order to understand someone, you have to ask them questions about, so if someone says, for example, I don't like peas, I might say, you find peas to taste bitter, or is it something about peas, something else about peas that you don't like? You know, so I'm trying to qualify what they're saying by repeating back to them what they've said. So I show that I understand them. You don't like peas. But then to open it up and see if I can understand them any deeper by asking a more, you know, general or probing question, that we can have a conversation about peas. Whatever. I'm talking about peas now. But if you're doing that to somebody in the confines of a therapy, and you're using your therapy techniques on them in order to lead them down a path where at the end you've got something for them, something good, a compassionate blanket, you know, you're a couple of steps ahead and you've got the active support to offer, you're there next week and the week after and the week after, that's okay if they understand that's therapy and that's what we're there for. But of course, if you're on the internet and you're going to have a chat about someone's mental health, and then secretly in your mind you're like, okay, wait till they mention their mother and I'm going to ask them this question, it's going to open them up like a can of worms, they're going to start crying, I've got my views, I've got my, yes, that's what I want to dig them open like an oyster with my clever techniques. That's the sort of worry that was raised last week, that because Dr. K has been educated in, it's strange to think that somebody who, he made the point himself, that somebody who is educated in and trained in this thing should be kept away from talking about it because they're educated and trained in it. He's using these techniques to have a good conversation with people, to be a good listener, to hopefully gain some insight. He does that in his day-to-day life because they're the ways he thinks, because that's who he is. He's internalized these ideas about conversational. It's not a clever psychological technique. It's not a pickup technique. But because you can't distinguish what's in his head, I have to trust his, what's the word? I have to trust his intentions and I can't see into them, it's also fair to say that, you know, you're the one in control of this process. You're the one with all the education. You're the one that's got your stream and, you know, are running a media product. You want the views, you want the attention, all this. You know how to get someone to talk about these things and to lead them into this path. Are you at some level using your techniques for the furthering of your own career, or is it all about them and their feelings? And let's be fair. If I was Dr. K, I would say, yeah, no, at some point I do want the views. At some point I'm trying to make this a wider audience thing. Help more people. It might have a noble end goal, but, you know, I guess I'd admit to that. And then, do you want a bit more of a juicy conversation? Well, you're here to talk about their mental health. You're here to get into those, you know, deeper places, deeper waters. So maybe someone who does it day to day, every day, forgets that for these people it is deep water. But also these people are coming to talk about their mental health, their deep waters. So they know what they're coming and what they've got to bring inside themselves. They know what's deep down inside that might come out that they're going to want to talk about because it's their...
You write born to kill on your helmet and you wear a peace button. Was that supposed to be some kind of signal?
I think I was trying to suggest something about the duality of man, sir.
Thank you, Nigel, for the tippies. Thank you for the tippies. This is the tippy system. Buy me a coffee. Nigel's bought me a coffee here. Nothing to see here, Gravekeeper. Nice one. I like that. That made me laugh. Give me a good laugh. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So, you know, I can see both sides of this. We can never see into somebody's head. We can never see someone's intentions. So we have to judge them on their actions. Okay? Someone might come crying, oh, I'm upset. They might be upset. They might not be upset. I don't know. For me, I'm going to be compassionate because that's my actions, isn't it? You know? So I get why people can levy this critique at Dr. K. I instinctively felt differently. I understood this concept, but I instinctively felt this is a murky water that he has to tread in. But Dr. K has been quite clear that we are making a media product to try and talk about mental health in a wider ranging context, and sometimes there's going to be deep waters, and I'm not here to therapize you over the internet. And I felt he's all really clear about it all the time. So I've understood this element of the argument, but I've not been worried by it. I've not been suspect of Dr. K's intentions, even if sometimes I also believe that he is intending to be popular or to become popular. Like, who does he want to interview? The bigger streamers. If you asked me if you could make a list of your top... Actually, I've made a list of my top 10 people to interview, and they're not the biggest streamers. But, you know, Asmongold could get on that list. No, I'd be quite happy to talk to big streamers on my stream, wouldn't I? It's not an offence. It's not, you know... it doesn't mean that you are guilty of exploitation necessarily, but it's a murky world to be in. I understand that. I can see that. Let's carry on.
It is a tendency for all professionals to, for example, take a celebrity or take a politician and want to use diagnostic terms, but that is unethical, and you should never use diagnostic labels with people that is outside of the therapy process.
I agree with this guy. I really totally agree with that. That's a fair point. Really well made.
A professional needs to understand that if a individual hears someone that they respect as a professional and identify them as a professional, and they start using diagnostic terms or even characteristics or criteria, then that is going to stick with the person, and it could again cause damage. And
so, have you ever been on the internet? Yeah. Have you ever been on the internet when you've got the old symptoms of whatever? What is it? Have you got a hurty ankle? Got a hurty tummy? You got a hurty? You know? What's that funny feeling in my mouth? Got on the internet. Had to go on the internet. Now I've got head, ankle, mouth cancer. It's definitely my heart. You look on the internet at something, and because you give some credence to the WebMD or the NHS website, and you jump to some conclusions. We do. We've all done it, haven't we? We've all done it. We've all worried about something that's turned out to be nothing because don't Google illnesses, says Snippy Snips. Yeah, don't go down that doom scrolling magic rabbit hole. But we've all done it, and then we've all had the thing where someone else has then come up with, like, you might go to the doctor or whatever, and they might say, oh yeah, absolutely, but also XYZ, you don't have to worry. Oh, it makes sense now. So I'm glad that the actual doctor, I trust that doctor. Yeah, I trust the WebMD. Yeah, so I get what this guy's saying is that, if you're an authority on mental health on the internet, such as Dr. K, if you are Dr. K, then this is I'm trying to be so careful what I'm saying here. Dr. K says a lot about actual diagnoses in his work because he's talking about mental health from the perspective of a Harvard-educated mental health professional who can actually talk about, there's one talking about ADHD from the context of TikToks. I haven't watched it, but it's probably a good example of, if he mentions something about ADHD and you think you might have ADHD and he says it and you put 2 and 2 together and jump to that conclusion, now you're being diagnosed by a doctor on the internet that you've got ADHD, but you might not have ADHD. I see this thing. I see what he's saying. And certainly if you're talking to Dr. K, and I believe this happens with his interviews, so I do believe it kind of happens, is that if I'm being interviewed by Dr. K, and like I said earlier, let's say I say, oh yeah, sometimes I get, I don't know what I'm trying to pick on. For Reckful specifically, with the Reckful thing, he mentioned borderline personality disorder. Now, I don't think Reckful has borderline personality disorder, but I think he mentioned some symptoms that were related to borderline. Let's say I said I've got let's say I've got panic attacks because, I've had my panic thing, haven't I? And Dr. K says, all right, panic attacks, yeah. Generalized panic disorder is this, and this, and this is why these people get it. And he uses it as a jumping off point to talk about generalized panic disorder, like I do on a stream. I take something somebody says and I use it to teach moment. To teach, to bring out something more. So let's have a little diversion. Let's go down a little tangent and let's talk about this whole big topic a bit. It doesn't mean you've got generalized panic disorder. It doesn't mean when he's talking about it, I've got generalized panic disorder. My mention of the symptoms, he used it as a jumping off point and talked about a topic. A bit like if we were talking about sport and I said, yeah, when I go in for tackles, quite often I end up taking the player as well as the ball. Oh yeah, dirty tackling. Yeah. So the thing with dirty tackling is I'm not a dirty tackler, but it's just a jumping off point. We've started on a topic and he's a sport aficionado and he's going to give me half hour talking about the dirty tackles of the last 20th century and why a dirty tackle is good and when a dirty tackle is appropriate, when it's not. And, we're going to talk about football. It doesn't mean I'm a dirty tackler, but if I internalize it because he's a sport coach and I've mentioned my stuff, he's saying this, I must be this. If I've missed the trick there that he's just jumping off and not focusing in, then I can see that. I really can see that in some of these conversations, you're looking as someone that's depressed or socially anxious or whatever it is that they've come to him with their troubles. You're looking for someone to say, it's this, because then maybe we can give you this, or you can take that and it's fixed. We can address it. If we know what it is, we can fix it. It's nice to have a nice clear like diagnosis and label. And also, like we start this conversation, if you Google the illness, you're going to jump to the conclusion. So as soon as the doctor says it and you think, oh, it might be, maybe it's not, whatever. So I can see where that comes up. And for Dr. K, this is why I try to be really careful about it. It's almost an impossible situation, isn't it? Because I want him to talk about mental health online. I want him to talk about those specifics, the diagnoses, the treatments. I want him to help us understand all that world. I want him to talk to these streamers and these personalities that people understand and identify with so that they can understand and identify with, and also to raise his profile and become a wider, more successful. I mean, he's nearly at 100k. Sorry, he's nearly at 1,000k subscribers, so he's already done that bit. But you know what I mean? I've followed him since he was like not at that, like since he instigated his thing. I was aware of it early. I've been looking at mental health online for a long time. I'm really like pleased and proud of what he's done. So more power to him, I believe. At the same time, I agree with all that stuff that we just said. I totally agree with all that other stuff we just said. It's a dangerous and difficult place to be, isn't it? To not blur that line, to keep those lines clear, but also to, you know, be in this modern world of social media and media production, talking about mental health. Yeah. So I think it's a difficult thing for Dr. K, and I think he tries to do his best. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's my take on that, isn't it? Hi to... I've got to be careful when I read names, because I try architect. That's a really cool way of writing architect. Saito Architect. What if all the disorders out there are just symptoms clusters of a mega disease? Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, it's possible. So even beginning to diagnose one symptom cluster is like opening Pandora's box. I laughed a little bit because in my own experience, I was laughing at my feelings of, like you said, symptoms and clusters. We're talking about psychological. We're talking about things in people's heads, like ideas. So you can't get a bow and tie it around it. You can't cut out the cancer. We are a complex collage of things. So every person with mental health struggles. I think that's every person these days as well. I'll be very slow to judge people on, you know, mental health struggles, and swift to be compassionate, because I think today's day and age, if you're bombarded with all this stuff, you know, we're only evolved apes essentially, aren't we? And all of a sudden we've got to drive cars, witness deaths, watch the news, struggle for money, pay our taxes, have the children, raise the children, worry about the children, like all this stuff. You know, like in this modern world, I believe it is difficult for us all to deal with it, and we all need a bit of R&R, a break from it, a healthy gamer attitude. So and thank you for your subby gift. You are a massive gifty subber and I absolutely appreciate it. And so yeah, I think with mental health, I think sometimes, and certainly with a lot of these streamers that are coming to Dr. K, it's very unlikely that they've got like one nailed on, oh, it's this. Have you opened the book at that page? That's me under that dictionary definition. I'm fixed. I think it's very unlikely that. I think it's much more likely a complex collage, like you say, of symptom clusters. And to be able to pick them out, even in today's modern medicine, they sort of have a, I don't want to say a scattergun approach, but let's say, you know, you present with certain symptoms, certainly with mental health symptoms, I might suggest, are you eating well? Are you sleeping properly? And that's not my mental health. That's not how I think about myself. That's not how I, you know, interact with the world on a psychological level. It's my nutrition and my sleeping pattern, you know, my energy routine. But that helps. That's important. So how do you fit that into the collage? Which part of my mental health struggle did that help? Did it help the depression, or did it help the you know, feelings of self-worth? Was it just part of the bigger thing? And I think in order to, I think if we could think about mental health in this way a bit more, you know, symptom clusters, an overarching sort of concept. Okay, there are definitely going to be some specifics. There are going to be some people who have schizophrenia, and there are going to be some people who do fit these diagnoses. But in the general context, I think more and more of us in today's day and age are just going to be popping up here. It's a spectrum, and we're going to be taking little bits and say, that fits me there, that fits me a bit there. It's a complex world we live in. I've got complex pressures, and they're playing out in these complex ways. So if it's almost, I'm just getting to try and help people as well. These complex, wider ranging conversations that Dr. K has, you know, these different ideas all through a bigger thing, a channel, a body of work. That's a good way to approach that for the masses, isn't it? With all these different things. It's a good way to keep up regularly, keep talking about something different, interesting, keep up with it. I think that's a good way to do it. And also, like I said, food, sleep, on our channel on Mental Health Monday, we've done videos about all these other things because we need to go back to almost I'm going to go back exactly to the Dr. K debate in a second, but just on a mental health level, from what I've just said about all these complex things, the complex responses, it's almost like we need to simplify it in a way. It's almost like if we can get back to a little bit more of a good routine, better sleeping, better eating, use that cognitive triangle to distract myself when I'm starting to feel bad or think about this, and let's get into trying to be productive and walk the dog and experience the nature and take some joy in the world. It's a more generalized comfort blanket approach, but I actually think it really helps a lot of different things. Yeah, I think it is pretty easy to see his motivations are good, I agree, but then also I don't want to judge him on his motivations because then I have to judge everyone on their motivations, and I can't judge everyone on their motivations. I can only ever judge them on their actions, and honestly, I wish I could see into people's heads, but people I don't know on the other side of the world that are presenting media, I have to be careful of trying to judge them on their motivations. But I also get that instinctive feeling about people as well. So I'm happy to be optimistic and give people the benefit of the doubt that they are good people, rather than see the world through a prism of everyone's trying to screw me. There's countless examples of symptoms or phenomena that have more than one label, like how transmission and a gearbox are the same thing. A medical term, a casual term, and a spiritual term. Yeah, that's quite a good point. Yeah, it's quite a good point. And we are only human beings with language trying to make some sense of stuff. And like I said, it's all just ideas come out of our minds. No one can draw me a picture of depression. No one can add up the number of atoms in a psychotic break. Whatever part of the spectrum. No one can. No one knows what the colour of anxiety is, do they? So, yeah, I'll get back to it. I have to try and push on because otherwise, this is long, and we are going to be at it next week as well. And it is important to try and get through.
Without any ability to follow up on that. I think it's the job, once again, of the professional to avoid that conversation entirely. Because a client could say, or an individual could say, I wonder what he even thought about that issue. Bipolar or narcissistic or characterological disorder. I mean, why did that even come up in his mind? I might have some kind of symptoms of that. So it is our job to avoid that entirely.
Good point. I actually went to a therapist. I don't know if you'd call it a therapist, and that's why I suppose this is why, is because she was very careful not to say, I am a psychotherapist, you will be diagnosed with this thing. I wanted it. I said, am I depressed? Do I have this? And she was very careful to say, we are not going to talk in that terms. Tell me how you feel. We'll talk about how you feel. I'm not going to give you a label to go away with. She was very careful to do that. So, yeah, you're confident my motivations are good. Yeah, you never met me. But also, I suppose, like I said about judging me on my actions, I'm here doing this. This is my actions. So I suppose that's how Dr. K, I should judge him as well. He could have been going at this from a different angle, couldn't he? He could have been trying to be popular through some other means, but he is there doing that. He's making videos on mental health. So that is the good work. Yeah, right, that is a good point. That is a very good point. I agree with you. I changed my mind. I stand corrected. What we do includes the things we say and the projection we put out into the world. True. Yeah. Do you know what, as well? It's weird. I'm confident I'm a good person because I don't tell you all the good things I do. I don't video myself. I've told you about picking up other people's dog poos in the... Not with my hands. If I've got a poo bag, a spare one. We went to the dog park yesterday, and when I was walking to the dog poo bin, there were drinks bottles and rubbish on the floor. So I just picked them up and put them in an extra bag and put them in the bin. I'm not going to video that and put it on my YouTube. But because I know I've done it, I know, because I know that I'm not ripping people off or, doing horrible things to people. I'm helping people. Because I know that, I don't feel I need to broadcast it because I'm confident in it. I don't need to prove it to the world. That's an interesting concept. I don't need to prove it to the world. But you are right. Yeah, good point.
It's good to make a video about this and why these rules are in place. I think it would also be important to say that there are some exceptions to these things because I don't want people to get their takeaway to be that, well, these rules really are rigid, because they're not. And even things like certain dual relationships may not be rigid. And the point here with Dr. K that I think you would want to make is not that just that the rules weren't followed rigidly. It's that these weren't tolerable exceptions. That these aren't just dual relationships, but these are dual relationships that are not in the best interest of the patient.
I'd like to point here, I think it is interesting that, like, let's say Dr. K has a friend that he's been his friend from school, her friend. They've been friends from school. And this friend turns out to, start talking about suicidal ideology. Dr. K is on the wrong side. They definitely refer them to a different person. They say, look, I can't talk about this with you because it's getting into the realm of actual medical thing. I'm going to refer you to my friend who's a doctor. I want you to go and see them and talk about this with them. That's what they have to sort of ethically do. But at the same time, what if it's not that clear cut? What if it's just, you're talking about feelings with your friends and you happen to be, you're not allowed to have friends and feelings. Of course you're allowed to do that. I suppose here at line's drawn as well, though, because they're on the internet, they're doing this healthy gamer thing. Reckful's come through. He's not an organic friend that he made in his life outside of therapy or mental health. Mental health and therapy was the context that they came together under. So that's interesting. He's cleverly calibrated and marketed psychological services to an all-new enlarged demographic. Yeah, that's a good point. And it can be taken two ways, can't it? It can either be... I'm so negative about marketing and manipulation. I feel so like advertising and marketing is such a blight on society because we've got such important things that we need to be projecting and sharing and developing. And instead, in the way of that, we've got somebody kicking... Like, imagine, you're trying to do good things by people and someone's pushing you out the way and saying, have you tried buying this can of Coke? Do you want to wear these trainers? And you're like, I'm just trying to give this guy some soup. And they're like pushing you out of the way. Have you seen my super soup? My super soup, it's brilliant. And look, just, we don't need all that rubbish. Stop shouting about it. Stop spending all that money trying to get in my head. Let us concentrate on the important stuff, helping people. So that's my instinct about marketing and manipulation. But obviously we use these techniques to try and help people as well, to promote charities, to reach the people that need reaching, that aren't people talking. I remember Dr. K saying, who's going to have if I'm not allowed to do it, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? Who's going to have these conversations? Because these people are the demographic that are committing a suicide, that are adrift from the rest of society, that feel adrift from the mechanisms that can help. And so Dr. K being able to not just reach them, but to exist in that space that they feel home, this online... We're talking an online thing, aren't we? A Twitch meta, whatever. That's important, and it's noble to be there. So it goes both ways, doesn't it? It's very interesting. Therapy can take the load off your friends, good point. But if you're a therapist, it's hard to say to friends, we can't have this conversation anymore because I'm actually a medical professional and we're blurring the lines. And they'll be like, well, chuff it. Like, I'm only halfway through my soup having a chat. Can we not talk about my feelings anymore, Dr. K? Great. Let's not invite Dr. K around for dinner, because even though he's a mental health professional, he won't let me mouth off about my feelings over dinner. Do you know what I mean? It's a very strange grey area. But I do understand that if it's a new acquaintance, the grey area is less, or maybe more. I don't know, maybe more. But certainly with an old friend, at a certain line, there's no grey area. When medical intervention is required on a mental health front, I, as the friend, cannot offer that. I must refer to another colleague. So that's interesting as well, isn't it? Where's my super soup?
We're doing 6 sessions on stream plus whatever amount off stream. If you're gonna after all of that not be clear or what your doctor-patient relationship is. That's pretty murky.
And here's another problem. Because he's directly referencing the Reckful issue, which is that Reckful wanted to maintain contact with Dr. K. He didn't want it to be a one-session thing. He wanted Dr. K's influence in his life as maybe, let's just say the word mentor or friend or mentor, from that mental health perspective, but acknowledged it couldn't be therapy and it wasn't therapy, but still wanted more. They embarked down this longer form conversation over 6 sessions. And at the end, as he says, their relationship is still sort of unclear insofar as Byron still feels he's getting something out of this on a mental health therapy level. Dr. K still feels that he's developing a friendship with an individual who he respects and doesn't want to, push that authoritative diagnostic aspect. But Reckful does need an authoritative diagnostic mental health. What if Reckful hadn't done this and instead done proper therapy? Would he still be here? Is that an issue? Reckful made his choices. Byron did what he wanted to do, and Dr. K in some ways went along with that because he didn't want to leave Reckful adrift. He didn't want to say, no, I'm not going to talk to you for 6 sessions. Now we're talking in therapy terms. Sessions, I get it. I see where the grey lines come out. We're not going to do. He's not going to say, no, I'm not going to. If you're a compassionate person and someone's reaching out to you and talking about these things, I can understand. It's such a grey area, though. At the end, I think Dr. K felt more like a friend, and I actually believe that Reckful also perceived him like that. And it's our perception as outsiders looking at the relationship and having to attach labels that is the difficult part. Because we see a medical health professional and a streamer with mental health difficulties who ended up committing suicide. We see those labels very clearly. But I think when you're 2 humans talking on the internet regularly, I think friendship... It's also important to note that I've got experience of this, of feeling positively towards my therapist. I mean, the reason I picked the people that I wanted to sit and talk with was because I wanted to make sure I picked people that I would feel positively with. Do you know what I mean? That was an important point. But also, I remember having conversations about art or culture and thinking, God, you know what? If I wasn't coming to therapy, this is the sort of person I'd quite like to have a nice conversation with around dinner but we can't ever broach that social aspect because we're doing this. So that's just one of those things, But that was because I'd gone to a very clear session, an hour, therapist, client, made all these lines were clear. But if you're drawn to people who are, interesting and helpful and make you feel and learn and feel good, that's not a bad thing. I honestly think that it's just that Dr. K underestimated Byron in certain ways. We all did in certain ways, didn't we? He was such a fantastic person. I'll remind us that, getting his achievements in World of Warcraft. Tap the microphone, then I hope it's not going. His achievements in World of Warcraft are like legendary. Like, he was genius level at certain things. Genius, madness, that that edge. Byron, I think it was easy to underestimate somebody who was so brilliant. It's easy to underestimate someone who's so brilliant because you just forget sometimes that you think they're just... I mean, we're all normal people, aren't we? We're all normal people. But you just forget sometimes that, underneath, going on in there... I just think we underestimated how deep, how... Whatever. I don't know. Hopefully I've made a good point there because I'm drifting away from my own thinking now.
By episode 6, it's being called therapy, in quotation marks. You want to have it clear before then. You're at the point where you think someone might have a psychiatric condition that needs care or needs treatment. There's a fork in the road. You either are going to go all in and say, okay, look, I am your therapist, I am your psychiatrist, you are my patient, and we're going to establish a doctor-patient relationship, and we're going to treat your conditions or work you up for what you have. Or you refer the patient to someone who will do that. You don't want to delay care by continuously evaluating whether you're going to be friends, streamers, doctor, patient, doctor.
I totally agree with this. I think in this particular circumstance, it's a little bit more difficult because at the very start, he was clear, I'm not a therapist. I'm not therapizing you, I'm not doing a therapy on you over the internet. That was very clear. And at the same time, it was COVID. You know, this evolved over COVID, and Byron killed himself during the lockdowns of COVID. So I don't know what conversations were had off camera by Dr. K and Byron about seeing a therapist other than Dr. K. I don't know if that wasn't actually set. I mean, maybe that was actually a conversation they had. I'm not party to their private conversations. I'd like to think Dr. K did raise this issue because it's quite a big one, isn't it? It's obviously something he was dealing with, thinking about. It's obviously a line he was trying to draw in the early stages that got blurred later on. But maybe they tried to make it clear off. And the other thing is, even if you wanted to, I don't know if it would have been possible. I certainly know in the UK, I can't talk for America, but in the UK, if I've got a friend and that friend needs medical health intervention, mental health, my choices are I can get them sectioned, or we can wait about 6 months on the mental health waiting list to see somebody to do an assessment, so that we can wait another 6 months before we can see somebody to get them some care. So it's not as straightforward as like, I'll write you a note to another name and you're in. Like, it's not as straightforward as that. It certainly wasn't during COVID, I think. So I don't know. I agree with what he's saying, but I don't know if that's a fair criticism of Dr. K, because I wasn't party to their conversations off camera.
Patient. If you think the patient has something that needs attention, make the decision and go with it.
A blurry relationship.
Also, what's also fair to say is Reckful's a very interesting and deep person, and he would have these interesting and deep conversations. That's a feature of his I wanted to say streamer career, but I also wanted to say personality, you know. So we were all used to him talking in these terms over a long period of time, and the conversations he was having with Dr. K, he was talking in more positive terms and making positive responses about how things were going. Like his last session with Dr. K, he said, I think you've helped me cure my depression, I'm feeling much better, things are going well for me. You know, there was a lot of positives in it conversationally. So again, like, being able to estimate, analyze, judge through an internet conversation someone's level of mental health struggle to the point where you would need to intervene from Dr. K's end, that's very difficult, isn't it? It's very difficult. He obviously missed that one. We all did. Anybody that watched I didn't watch Reckful regularly. I didn't watch his stream every day and put it on. I like Asmongold more, and I was aware of Reckful. Like I said in the last episode, I used to be a Hearthstone player, and you know, anyone that's ever played Hearthstone and made a video, I've watched it. You know, I was totally aware of Reckful and what he was up to, and you know, his IRL streams and going to Japan, and you know, the whole streamer landscape. Do you know what I'm saying? He wasn't like my poster boy on my wall. But after he's gone, I've looked at more of his content, and I've, you know, found more joy in it than I ever realised was there. And I don't think his audience spotted it, did they? I don't think people that watched him regularly on the internet were able to say, oh, today's the day that we need to start intervening. So why should it all fall on Dr. K's shoulders on 6 conversations used as a jumping off point for conversations about mental health over the internet to be able to diagnose? They're saying don't diagnose. Now they're saying be able to pinpoint a diagnosis of needing intervention. So that's a bit harsh, I think.
Every interaction, well, I would imagine that every interaction the person wouldn't be able to tell if this is this a conversation with a friend, or is it a conversation with a therapist? So
what if it's a conversation with a friend who is a therapist? This is the difficulty. I'm sure Snippy Snips has had this, being a medical trained person. Even if the people, like, again, like going back to my random collage of, what if, you know, you work in cardiology, so your neighbour comes round to talk about their broken bone in their arm. because you're a doctor, because you're a nurse, because you're a medical professional. They come to you with that general, like, you don't have, because you're a specialist. In certain, they want to talk to you because of your general wisdom in that general area. It doesn't matter that you're a specialist in a different field. You work in that general area. You might not even be a specialist, whatever. We've got a friend who was a nurse, and like, you've got this family friend, haven't you, who is in the medical, like, when something happens, you ring them up and you want their opinion, don't you? Because out of all the people, you don't want to, if you've got a problem with your car, you want to ring up your mate who's a mechanic and say, I've got this rattling noise, what do you think it is? You want their opinion. That's just human, I guess. I've learned suicide attempts often happen when they're feeling bad. See, there's something I didn't know that maybe the medical health professional did, or should have. Maybe there's another way to look at that. Can you look at? See, there you go. And you tell them to go to the doctor. So from Dr. K's perspective, it might have been quite clear. He might have made it quite clear. I am a therapist and I am friendly. He talked to Reckful. He said, I respect you. I was aware of who you were as a Warcraft player, and we're not having a therapist session. So, I think that was. But on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the story, Reckful himself is there. He's now got a new friend who's a therapist. I think that's a fair way to look at it in a nice human way. I suppose the onus, the burden of behavioural decision does fall on Dr. K to say, hang on, are you aware that I'm not a therapist, I'm your friend, and I've taken that hat off, and it's got to stay well away, or does it? Am I allowed to tell you about what I think is rattling in your engine, but don't hold me to it because I'm just on the phone? You bear. I've been a hairdresser, and I've had all sorts of people call me up and ask me about hair colour. And I'm like, well, the first point is I can't see your hair, so I can't give you any sort of recommendation because the hair colour is going to react with the colour in your hair, and I'm going to then come out with I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to tell you. And they're like, oh no, but surely what about a 6'4"? Is it better than a 6'5"? I'm not going to tell you, because as soon as I say a 6'4", the hairdresser said 6'4", it's gone wrong. I didn't say that. I didn't see your hair. I need to do a strand test. I understand this, but at the same time, when someone said, do you think a bob would suit me? Yeah, I think a bob would suit you. It would look nice. Doesn't mean go and cut your hair into a bob and hold me accountable.
If you think about what informed consent is, I am agreeing to treatment. I'm agreeing that we're going to be talking about things. I'm allowing you to intervene on me in whatever modality that therapist has. If you have blurry lines and the patient doesn't know when you are doing things to them, right? So they don't know, is this just kind of anecdotal information? Is this just this person being my friend, or are they actually kind of operating on me? And in that regard, if you have a blurry relationship, the person can't actually know kind of what's what. Do
you know what, that is true, but it also takes place within a therapy session in a much more short-term concept. If I'm talking to my therapist and in an hour I'm saying a lot of stuff, and sometimes they're saying some stuff back, there are moments where I sort of lean forward while they're saying the stuff back, and I hope this is the nugget of it. Like, I've churned out all this stuff, and then I hope they've managed to sort of, process it and say, oh, look, it through the medical system, through the psychological system, here's your nugget of information. I've processed that, and I've got your recommendation. I've got your answer. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing you hope for, isn't it? It's not exactly what therapy is at all, but it might be what you hope for. So you say all this stuff, and then you sort of lean in because they're saying their little bit now, and you hope that this is going to be something that you might take it away and think about it in the week, and can I put that into action? The therapist said this about that, and I told them all this problem, and they said maybe this, or maybe that. So you put a lot of stock on those moments, I guess. You do most of the talking in therapy. The therapist then does a little bit back in reflection of what you've said, and you put a lot of stock in it, I guess. But hopefully they understand not to drop those sort of breadcrumbs that you might turn into big loaves of something else. Hopefully they, manage to reflect back I'm not 100%, authoritative on what the role of the therapist is, am I? Because I'm not a therapist. But hopefully they manage to reflect back, like these people are saying, in the correct ways at the correct times. And also, when it is important to drop an important breadcrumb, to see that sign and to make sure it points in the right direction, I believe. So that is difficult if you're talking to a friend who happens to be a therapist and you've been talking for a lot of time, and then they might be playing World of Warcraft and on their headphones, and you might be sitting forward listening for the nugget of information, and they might say something that's just off the top of their head because they're your mate and they're not in a therapy session, and they're not realizing that the things they say that are not well thought out nuggets of road signs, you're sitting forward and you're listening for. So there is a danger there, isn't there, in a relationship like this? I do appreciate that. Yeah, I do think that's true. But again, you can't. It's hard for Dr. K to. It's hard for Dr. K to know what someone else is thinking when they're listening to him, and to be able to sort of give you a little asterisk before. This statement is going to be something I'm just saying because we're having a chat, and this statement is going to be something that is important mental health information. Do you know what I mean? I see that. And it's hard if you're suffering with mental health issues to... this is why people are not friends with their therapists. I get it, yeah, I get it.
If you're acting in the role, not in the role of, in the therapist-patient relationship, you can't diagnose somebody because you're not acting in an impartial, unbiased manner towards them. So if I take somebody on as a patient, I take their history, I take a history, I might do some psychological evaluations to differentiate between different diagnoses that are going on. If they're not my patient, I can't do any of that. Another piece to it is that when we diagnose somebody, having the degrees, whether it's a psychiatrist or a licensed mental health person, diagnosing somebody carries a lot of weight to it, right? So insurance companies base a lot on diagnoses. There's certain diagnoses that are very stigmatizing for people. To just go around diagnosing people that aren't your client is potentially extraordinarily harmful.
Which is why Dr. K definitely doesn't do that. This is not something being levelled at Dr. K. At no point in any of his work that I've seen, and I've not seen his entire body of work, but I've not seen him giving someone a medical diagnosis. I think she makes a very good point. I think that's really, a good point, but it lands on their chart and stays forever. There you go. It's like a criminal record. But even that gets wiped if you know your way into the police computers. So look, but she's made a really important, reasonable point. I think something that's coming, we're only halfway through informed consent. We're going to try and push on to the end of it at least. But something that feels like it's coming out, like raising itself as a thing in me, is like, is Dr. K allowed to have friends? Is he allowed to have online streamer friends and have those conversations online? Because he's a doctor and a mental health professional. The lines are there. Is he allowed to have friends though? I think we're being mean to him if we say, no, you can't. Is he allowed to talk about anything he wants? Yes, definitely. For God's sake, America's big on that. Are the people, should you be clearly signposting all these things about, should you be maybe giving them a fact sheet and a worksheet about informed consent before we get started? Yes, probably. Does he do that? I don't know, probably. Again, we're not able to judge Dr. K without somebody coming forward and saying, I've talked to him, and before we talked, he did or didn't do this stuff. He made me aware of this or didn't, or, do you know what I mean? What is said off camera is just as important as what's said on camera with Dr. K, and we're not party to that. So we can either assume he's some malignant bad actor, negligent, or we could assume other things, that he's, quite conscientious. But it's all just assumptions, and I'm not prepared to go there really, because it's not fair. And he does online, on what I've seen. Yeah, he reminds his friends he's not their therapist. It's a constant thing for him. That it's like a catchphrase almost, where he says, "This is not therapy." A lot of the time, they mention therapy, they talk about therapy, or they say, something. And he says when he sees them doing it, he says, "Oh, but this is not therapy, by the way." And they even joke along. Sometimes they joke along, go, "Yeah, no, it's therapy." And what do you do with that? What do you do with that if they somehow internalizing your direct statement as some kind of sarcastic joke? What are you going to do about that? I don't know. At some point, the burden of whatever the burden is, it has to evaporate between the two people and their friendship in a way, doesn't it? I think we should allow Dr. K to have friends, and I think this is all really good, important stuff. And it's a good job Dr. K is not online saying, "I am a therapist," because if he was, this would be, he'd be taken down by all this stuff. It'd be a good kick in for him. But it's a good job he's not, he's really careful to make sure he doesn't do this, I guess.
To those people.
I'm going to talk to you about something called borderline personality disorder. I don't think you have this, by the way. Right,
this is interesting because this is how Mr. Girl has done this edit. It's a really good edit. It does... it's a hit piece on Dr. K, isn't it? So he's now got the best example he can of this happening with Reckful. But he's just said he's going to talk to you about borderline. It's out of context, so we don't know. We can't. It's hard to judge this because it's out of context. But I've seen it. I can tell you the context. It's that thing where he's saying, this is a point that you brought up. It's reminded me of this mental health thing. It gives me an opportunity to talk about a mental health problem. But before you go down this rabbit hole, Reckful, I don't think you have this. But the way Dr. K talks quickly, and if you're talking to him about mental health stuff, he's got these mental health ideas in his head, and he's got, he's talking. He doesn't maybe realise all that stuff we've just said about Byron is going to... You've told him it's not him. You've told him he doesn't have this. His ears are still pricking up. He's still leaning forward. So Byron's making the mistake of listening too intently to this and internalising it about himself. But Dr. K has told him not to. But Dr. K is not realising this because he's not in a one-to-one situation in a room with him. He's now not even looking at Reckful's face on the camera. He's looking at the the Google thing, bringing up the information about borderline personality that he wants to reference on his notes. He's distracted. So this is not a therapy session. So he's not able to notice those things. But we do as the outsider looking in with hindsight. So it's really, it's a really interesting way to present this, but I don't think it's entirely fair on Dr. K, but let's see it.
Ordinarily harmful to those people.
I'm going to talk to you about something called borderline personality disorder. I don't think you have this, by the way, and it's not
really
my place to diagnose.
Okay, a lot of people think I do have that.
Maybe you do. I don't know. So I don't have enough diagnostic.
I don't know.
So I'm going to just talk a little bit about borderline personality disorder because I think that there's some features of it which are relevant.
Yeah.
So he's going to talk about some features because he thinks they're relevant. It's an opportunity to talk about that, like I've said. But Byron, he's missed that cue again. Byron said, some people do think I have it, and we can't ever know. So Byron's leaning forward into it. And Dr. K's been careful to tell him not to, but he hasn't seen him on the one-to-one. He hasn't picked up that cue. It's just one of those things.
And also like some very interesting data that some people don't know. So the first is that borderline personality disorder, a lot of times these people have a fear of abandonment. Okay. And so they do get overly clingy. And as they get overly clingy, they sort of like force people away.
Do you notice sometimes Byron in his streams gets up and goes and gets a cup of coffee or does something else, keeps talking to the chat, keeps engaging. At this point, he's not doing anything other than leaning forward and leaning into it and thinking, look, it's exactly that mechanism that we don't want to have happening. He's doing. But it's an accident because Dr. K's been careful not to give him that cue. He's just got that cue himself out of it.
And then it kind of like reinforces their fear that like they're unlovable. Yeah. And then that sort of, in each round makes it worse because once you do it to the first person, your sense of being unlovable increases. And then when you interact with the next human being, like that wolf has become hungrier. And so when they sort of treat you well, they feel really good about themselves. And when the person starts to like kind of slip away, it gets like stronger and stronger and stronger. And each round is like becomes, as you put it, a self-fulfilling prophecy and makes it harder. Mm-hmm. Now, what many people don't know about BPD is that BPD, there's actually some very interesting data So a lot of people think of BPD as being incurable. But there's some really fascinating data that if you can get in a stable relationship for 2 years and have someone not abandon you, then there's a 50% chance your BPD will like actually go away.
And this is difficult for me, right? Because he's now saying if you can get in a stable relationship and have someone not abandon you. What's actually happened is Dr. K's got this bit of information about BPD. He's into the medical stuff, isn't he? He's into the up-to-date ideas, right? Dr. K is into these up-to-date ideas. They've been having a conversation. Borderline personality disorder or its symptoms have come up a little bit. And Dr. K has said, oh, hang on. In his brain, he's gone, oh, hang on. I've got an interesting thing about that. It's a bit like, let's say we're having a conversation about cars. My friend's a mechanic. And I've said, oh, you know, those carbon brakes. And, you know, I haven't got carbon brakes on my car, but they've got, and he's, oh, did you know about carbon brakes? That carbon brakes have this, and this, and carbon brakes were first formed here. And if you've got carbon brakes, then you need this kind of tyre to go on the car if you've got carbon brakes. And I've said I haven't got carbon brakes. He knows I haven't got carbon brakes. But because it's come up in conversation, he's got this thing in the back of his mind that he was reading in the magazine the other day. Oh, it's a conversation point. That happened. So that's happened here, is that you haven't got borderline personality disorder. I don't think you do. And he's like, well, some people say I do. And while he's saying that, Dr. K's not listening because he's looking for this thing on the internet that he wanted to bring up because he's remembered from the other day. And then he's like, right, so borderline personality disorder, which you don't have, by the way, it causes this. And he said that if you can get a stable, like the research has shown, he's looking at the research, and he said, if you can get in a stable relationship for 2 years, you, the borderline personality disorder sufferer, then you can be saved, essentially. Byron here is hearing this. He's done the lean in. He's missed the cues that Dr. K's put down. He's saying to him, in Byron's head, I've got borderline personality disorder. What's this golden nugget that Dr. K has? If I can be in a stable relationship for 2 years, I can be saved. I can't be in a stable relationship for 2 years. I can't be saved. I'm stuck in a chuffing room in the lockdown. Like, that's what's gone in Byron's head. But the truth of the matter might not be that he has it might not, you know, maybe this is that's what they're pointing at and saying this is Dr. K's been negligent because he's put this idea in Byron's head and it's led to damage for Byron because he's seeing it as a negative. I've got borderline personality disorder now and I can't even be saved because I can't be in a relationship for 2 years. That's what he's thinking. But Dr. K's not trying to put that out. Dr. K is, oh, thanks, Kat. Thanks, Kat. Let me just check that everything's still working. The cat just jumped on the table and landed on the keyboard. Just check that everything's still working. The cat just... Yeah, all she did was change the screen. I was on big face. She just edited me. The cat edited me. So, Dr. K has not been putting down those breadcrumbs, but Byron's picked them up by mistake. Dr. K's not in the room with him. He's not looking at him face to face. He's not even looking at him on the screen because he's looking at this other stuff. He's missed the fact that Byron has not picked this up or he's picked up the wrong idea. So there's, you know, an accident happened there. I don't think Dr. K's negligent for allowing that accident to happen because of the format of the conversation they're having. This was a longer conversation. It was online. They're streaming. You know, Byron's doing other things online at the same time. He gets up and has a cup of coffee in some of them. And, you know, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's about context. And if it were a therapy session, that would be a terrible negligence for Dr. K. But it's not a therapy session. He's made that clear. And because of that, I think we have to allow him to, we have to allow that accident to, you know, give him the compassion to forgive him for not catching that. Not many of the audience caught it at the time. The people in chat weren't saying, oh, hang on, look, there's a problem here because he's thinking this and you said this wasn't and now it is. And it is what it is, isn't it? It is what it is. I think you know what I'm saying.
So it's really fascinating. Yeah. And I think
it's the opposite of you shouldn't get in a relationship until you're stable on your own.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need. You need someone in your life who's not going to turn away.
This was edited then, so you do need to see the full context. But he's now saying, look, there's this thing in science that says this thing about these people with borderline personality. You know, in general, maybe that's what you need. A bit of, you know, okay, you don't have carbon brakes, but, you know, you might want some new tyres. Like, he's not saying you have BPD and this is your cure, but he's just suggesting. He's got a smile on his face. You know, he's having a chat to his friend, maybe. You know, but this is that therapy line. I get it. I see it. We see that it's happening to Byron. but we don't see. I think we see Byron taking those wrong cues, constructing the problematic ideas, the way these professionals have explained to us it can happen. But we don't see Dr. K pushing that agenda, do we? That's the thing. We don't see him pushing that. We just see, a sort of heavily edited couple of moments that feel on that wrong tip, but actually aren't that bad in the reality. As the way they played out in reality in real time, it wasn't like a negligence. Yeah, interesting things about BPD, which I'm not going to dig into BPD right now, because obviously if you want to research mental health and look at mind.org, if you're watching this and you think, what about BPD? Don't assume you have obviously you realise from what we're saying today, don't assume you have these problems just because someone talks about it on the internet. But mind.org is not what I thought it was. Where's Mind? Mental health support. Mind.org.uk, sorry. Mind.org.uk. Mental health support. Lots of interesting stuff. Good jumping off point. Trying to, find out anything. Good place to start. So we've got the Samaritans, if you are feeling particularly low, and Lifeline 988 in the UK, talking about suicide. And we'll push on with what we're talking about.
For a period of at least 2 years. And you may be terrified that they'll turn away at 2.5.
Right. I might never get it. I mean, there's no guarantee I will, but I'll look for it, yeah.
Yeah, so sure there is.
See, another thing Dr. K does that I think is really good, I like it, that he does it, is he says things that he thinks people can get hooks into and feel optimistic about. Like, he thinks dropping that on him there, you want to find someone and establish a stable relationship. Coming from Dr. K, he thinks people are going to hear it as, there's hope for me. I could get in a 2-year relationship. Life could be good. I wonder what that would look like. I'll picture that. That's nice. I'll go for that. But actually, I see Byron's end, which is you hear the thing that, the life you can't have that is depressing you already is something that would, what an irony that that's the thing that I need to make me better, because I'm not going to get that stable relationship. And therefore it's a tragedy that it's the thing that could help me. I've already been with I feel a kinship with Byron is that I've had relationships in the past with people that I feel, if for whatever reason either of us had put whatever different bit of work in at the right time, I could still be, we could be married today with kids, but we're not. Those chances of, those decisions, that decision tree, that fork in the road, they've gone that way, and that's how it is. So, Byron had a first love, and it, went wrong, and he pines after that. He can't fix it now. The fork in the road has happened, and he kind of hears from Dr. K that if he hadn't made mistakes in the past, he could have a better life. That's not what Dr. K is trying to say to him. Dr. K is trying to say there is a future path with a fork that could lead to the good thing. But Byron hears, I have already trodden this path, and there is no future. I've already made that mistake. So it's important to note, talking about suicide, talking about Samaritans and Lifeline, that those Dr. K is the one with the more, Dr. K's got the healthy mental health, got his shit together, not suffering, sees things in a more positive light. Byron, who is suffering, sees things that nobody's correct or incorrect. We're seeing things differently because of how we feel. And if you're feeling depressed and seeing things in that negative light, and you have made these decisions, bear in mind that you are just as wrong as Dr. K is right, is Reckful is right, as you are wrong. Is nobody can see the future. None of us can make those decisions unless you do the one thing that absolutely makes the decision for yourself and decide to commit suicide. Unless you do that, everything else is on the table. Everything else is an option. And you might not believe it now, but trust me, follow me and I'll lead you out to the other side where saints march in. So, there are options. That's what Dr. K is trying to say. He's trying to present that hope. So you've got to look for that hope. That's the main thing, isn't it? That's the main thing. One more day struggle. Another day struggle. But we'll aim for the stars, won't we? We will. So that's the disconnect that's happening here.
I would not say so.
There's only one
I've
way.
gotten in some really unhealthy situations because I'm so desperate for human interaction that I'll have, paid people's rent just so they'd be my roommate. So I'd have someone around,
And Dr. K seems to miss this as well, but this is Reckful talking about his own feelings of self-worth. I'll pay someone's rent just to make sure that they'll be around. He's saying that I'm not valuable, that people wouldn't just want to be with me for me. I paid their rent so that they'd be around. It's a confession of a valueless self that is missed by Dr. K.
Done it a few times. Just a lot of dumb things.
Or maybe not missed. Maybe I'm being rude to Dr. K there. Maybe it's not missed. Maybe he's taking that on board, processing it, thinking of the right way to respond at the right time. Maybe he's even thinking, this is not something I want to talk about on camera. I want to talk about with you off camera with that, because this one goes deep. Patient therapy, camera, whatever. Maybe he's trying to be careful now, because that was a opening of a deep wound.
Things like that, or try to get them to quit their jobs and give them a new job that requires less time so I could have a friend. And then obviously I've realized that these things are unhealthy, but I was just in desperate situations where I needed human interaction.
So Reckful, I'm confident that there's going to be someone around in your life who will be there for you most of the time when you need them, hopefully, for at least a period of 2 years.
This is funny as well, because Dr. K is cute that he's doing this. He's talking around the subject. You'll see what I mean in a second. But Byron doesn't pick up what he's throwing down and thinks, yeah, you can say this, but I've lived it. I know the difference. You can say it, but I've lived it. So it's nice that you say it, but I know that Byron thinks he's already 3 steps ahead of, he's already processed. And Byron is a very fast thinker, isn't he? This is one of the tragedies of the genius madness thing, that Byron is already 7 steps ahead. He's already 7 steps ahead. No wonder he's not picking up what Dr. K is throwing down here. He's thinking in concepts in the future. He's thinking ahead. But just because he's that smart, that intelligent, that creative genius in those ways, he's conjured up things that might seem very real to him, because like what we said earlier about the optimism, the pessimism, the depression, the positivity, the negativity, he's already run away to, step 1, step 2, step 3 might have been just a little bit off with some of the ideas, just adding up the worst case here and the worst case there, and they may not happen. But already we're 3 steps down now, and we're 4 steps down, and it seems very logical and smart thinking, but actually, you can think yourself into a bit of a bad situation. That's not even, like I said earlier, no guarantees. Oh, no guarantees means nothing good might ever happen to me. Yeah, but it also means that something good might happen to you. No guarantees. So let's be fair on that. But I think Byron's already past that point. He's not even thinking that conversation through. He's, Dr. K thinks someone will be around for him. I can almost guarantee it. Byron's thinking, I've had these people, they've said this before, they've ended up doing X, Y, Z to me. I remember this person who's done that. I miss my brother. It's you can say it, but I'm already 10 steps ahead. And so he misses what Dr. K is putting down here, which is a shame.
Okay.
How can I be confident in that?
How can you be confident?
Yeah.
Well, you find me stimulating to talk to, and I'm not demanding too much of your time or spamming you with walls of text. And even if I were, you'd feel inclined to answer me because it's you love helping people. it's your passion.
So Reckful is sort of gathering that, he's referring to their relationship, that he will be there for him, and Reckful is sort of gathering that, but he's pointing out that the things that I do that push the people away that I love, that I wish were my life partners, the walls of text, the neediness, whatever, I'm not doing that to you. So Reckful's thinking further ahead, isn't he? It's a bit of a shame for Dr. K that his offer of friendship, his valuable offer of friendship, bear in mind, this is what they're talking about. This they're putting this on the record here of against Dr. K, because the blurry lines. Dr. K seems to me to be very clear on his lines here. I'm offering you my friendship, my support, my long term. If you need someone to talk to, I'll be there to listen. I think he sees that as more valuable to Byron. In terms of who's going to do what work to help who, this is really important. In terms of who's going to do what work to help who, Byron could be his client. He could be referred to someone else as a client. He maybe will be referred to someone else as a client in Dr. K's perfect world, because Dr. K would rather be his friend. Because I'll tell you something, if you're his therapist, even in a perfect world, you're not going to be answering the phone at 4 a.m. You're not going to be dealing with those walls of text. You're not going to be picking up on the thing he said when he was drunk that time at the party, because you're not going to be at the party because you're a therapist. And Dr. K would rather be ingratiated as a friend in Byron's life and able to help him at any juncture, any time, whenever. He's reasoned out, how do I help Reckful the most? If I'm a therapist, I'm limited. If I'm his friend, I'm there whenever he needs me. He can say anything. It doesn't go against any ethical code. Just, we're just friends. We can just shoot that shit, it's... I think Dr. K's chosen wisely there in the long run. Even though we can second guess and with hindsight say, what if? I think he's chosen wisely. I think he's tried his... I think it's a shame, really, because, like I said, he's tried here to offer that, what he perceives as something quite valuable, and like he's sort of coming out in a way as his friend, isn't he? Saying, look, we said this is not therapy, we said it's not therapy, but we're coming to the end of this thing now, and I'm here for you. I can't... Dr. K can't say this in therapy sessions. He might see people... I just want to check my sound, it's not buzzing. Might see people... yeah, no, it's not. You might see people that are suffering, and they have to say... I've been to therapy where they say, the hour is up. And I think, just give me 10 more minutes, because we're really getting somewhere. By next week, I'm going to have forgotten this. Because you can't. 10 minutes, no. The next person's in the line, whatever. Like, I've got to go. Your hour is up. But I do sometimes think the therapist understands that they wish they could give me 10 more minutes. I've been in the waiting room where someone else has had 10 more minutes because it's been a serious thing, and I haven't begrudged them that. So it's okay. They do sometimes do that. But the point I'm making is that they might feel to reach out their hand and say, look, you're going through this and I understand, and okay, we've just done our hour session, you've got to go home, but I'm here for you. But they're not allowed. Well, Dr. K's chosen with his heart to do that instead, and I admire that. I actually admire that. And here is the moment he does it, and they've used it against him.
Passion. So, from your perspective, maybe you can feel confident, but then if you put yourself in the shoes of any other human being, I don't know that they'll really spend 2 years with me unless there's...
So, Reckful, I'm not counting on them to spend 2 years with you.
What are you counting on?
I'm counting on myself. It's the only
that you'll spend 2 years with me. Yeah, that I believe. That I can believe. That,
so I can't trust any of them.
So when he tells him directly, because, Byron's really thinking, it makes him smile, it makes him happy. And it was building up that it was a bit of a missed high five, a high five left hanging, wasn't it? I'm offering you my friendship, and you still think it's not enough and it's not going to help you, and it's like, oh, great. But actually, it made Byron feel, he understood what he meant then, and then, yeah. But it's not the answer. It doesn't mean that Byron's now married and with kids and everything's fine. It's not the answer, but Dr. K did what I think is the most noble and generous thing there. And, I actually really, that was a moment in that I really admired. And now I can understand why it's ethically an issue. But I still think he made the right choice.
True.
So I'm going to try
to
love you.
It's nice having someone to come to every week like this.
I'm going to try to love you for 2 years at a minimum.
I really appreciate it.
So this is the other thing is that I do helping people, but I also like helping you.
Now, this is difficult, of course, because you can see there's an emotional response from Byron, and he's holding it in. And I think Dr. K also thinks maybe they'll talk off stream after this. But he doesn't want to probe that. But also, they're going to say, there's a red flag. You're seeing the person that's suffering emotionally respond. So, as the therapist, or not the therapist, or whatever the chuff you are, you should say, there's a warning sign. Can't let them just walk out. I've worked them up into a frenzy, almost. I've caused this. I've asked them these questions, and now they're crying. 10 minutes is up. Time to go. It can't be that, can it? Do you know what I'm saying? They see that as an issue, I guess.
And I want you to understand this, Reckful. I'm not even helping you. This isn't help. I don't like the phrase help. Help implies charity, right? It implies that you have something and that you have nothing and I have something and I'm helping you. I'm not helping you. This is just me being human and you being human. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think it's one of the hardest concepts.
What do you mean by human?
It's just we're just being us, man. It's not something fancy.
You're doing what you enjoy.
It's not about enjoy. It's I'm being who I am and you are being who you are. And that.
It is a bit of an issue here because I think honestly, deep down, and this is me just judging my ideas off things that are being not said, but I think Byron does at some level want a therapist. I think he understands he's got mental health struggles and he does want a therapist. And when Dr. K, quite often in their interaction, when Dr. K says, I'm not your therapist, Byron sometimes looks hurt, sometimes looks like he's internalizing it as a rejection, sometimes looks like he kicks back against it sometimes, as if it's like we have to say this, but really you are a therapist. There are times I don't see a positive body language from Byron in this clarification point from Dr. K, so that's an issue for me. But at least Dr. K is being clear.
That's the most that we can expect of ourselves.
I want to update the viewers on what happened off stream because they missed one therapy session that isn't therapy.
It's not therapy, right? So
yeah,
that's actually what we talked
happened?
about, right? So I think my impression was we were talking about clarifying what our relationship is.
Yeah.
And whether this is therapy or this isn't therapy. And
Yeah.
what our options are in terms of how to form a relationship. And I think that, the last time we talked on stream, we had a conversation about abandonment. And then I made a very bold claim because I got emotional as well. And I felt like I wanted to be there for you so that you no longer felt this way. And I think sometimes what happens amongst people is that they have different kinds of complexes, and I have them too. And one of the things that happens with me is when I see someone hurting, I want to make them better. And sometimes I will, in that moment, say whatever I think I can to make them feel better, but sometimes that's irresponsible.
Now, I don't know what they said off camera, but this is one that's difficult, and it's kind of, I take Byron's seat in these interactions more than I do Dr. K's, even though I'm the one here running Mental Health Monday, 8 p.m. GMT, every Monday on Twitch. I see that Byron is slouched down and, a bit sad. I think they've obviously had this clarification conversation, but I think it feels a bit like Dr. K's extended this, all those things that I said that were noble and good about it and brave and the decision. I think that he's almost seen the ethical problem with it, reviewed his own statements on, I agree with him. You can say things on Twitch, on camera, in conversation, in real life to people that you think, oh God, did I actually say that and promise that? Shit. I was taught that you always have to make good on your promises. That doesn't count when I didn't finish playing certain games on stream. That doesn't count with that. But actual things in life, if you say you're going to do something, you have to go and do it. So I feel instinctively a bit uncomfortable about Dr. K explaining that he extended that unquestionable friendship and is now in some way rescinding it based on some sort of ethical perspective that they've discussed. Maybe Reckful said to him, though, if it comes down to it, I'd rather not have you as a friend because I'd need you as a therapist. Maybe that is, and if I'm Dr. K and he said that to me, I have to say, okay, that hurts me because I'd rather be your friend, but you know, maybe I can be your therapist then. Reckful's, what if he said, Dr. K said, I'll refer you to another therapist, and Reckful said, I don't want to go to another therapist, I'm not going to do that. If that's the case, then you're just another person rejecting me, I might as well kill myself. In that case, it might be hard to, you know, after these sessions and conversations or whatever, to just say, all right, Reckful, we've come to an end of our conclusion here then, I can't be your friend and I'm not going to be your therapist, so get out. And I don't know what's been said off camera, but it does feel not disingenuous, but a bit, you know, I see this as a really, again, it's quite brave of Dr. K, who understands the implications here, to sort of go back on his word, so to speak. But they've been talking off camera. I don't know the full context.
And I'm not, I mean, I think in a sense it was irresponsible, but I think from our perspective, we're trying to understand, you know, like, what is this for you? What is this for me? What are we doing on Twitch? This is like kind of a new thing. And I think a common perception is that if you're talking about feelings with someone, then that is therapy. But I think we can kind of say, like, so Reckful also shared with me that he had a great conversation for several hours with Pokimane. Am I saying that right now? Right? Where he also talked about feelings and things like that. But I don't...
The body language is awful, isn't it, from Byron here, though? You know, the fact he doesn't even look up or say a word, it almost feels here like he's having to be here. Like, Dr. K's got this stuff he needs to say. They've had this previous thing, they've had this conversation. Dr. K needs to go online and explain things. Reckful doesn't necessarily feel like going through this process of going online and explaining this thing. He might not even be into this thing. Doesn't seem it. It almost feels like you've got an adult and a, you know, naughty child that is apologising for something and doesn't want to look up and, you know, engage. I don't like Byron's body language here. It worried me. It's easy in hindsight.
I don't think that Pokimane is your therapist. I don't think I'm your therapist. I think you can talk to another human being about feelings and you can explore things that are authentic and important to yourself, and that doesn't necessarily make you a therapist.
I think we give Dr. K a lot of credit for having these conversations out in the open, but I also think that we've already gone down a bit of a road with Byron. We don't know, because this has been edited, where this sits in context of their discussions, but we do know they've already, you know, been over some important ground and Byron's been upset, and, you know, maybe this should have been said very clearly at the start, more clearly. Things have got a bit out of hand. Dr. K is now wrangling them back in, it seems. Which makes me worry a little bit, because he made that unconditional offer of friendship, which I was quite, you know, positive about. I'd rather it was just left at that. So, but this is the reality, isn't it? So let's just see how it plays out, I guess. They're using, bear in mind, they're using small edited parts of bigger things to make Dr. K look bad, but this is the worst they can make him look. So, you know, and I also forgive him a lot, because he's just a human being trying his hardest to do the right thing, it seems.
And so we were also talking about the other options in terms of, like, what are we? Are we like colleagues, like that stream on Twitch together? We'd sort of talked a little bit about, you know, things like viewership and stuff like that. I raised some concerns about favoritism. So I want to try to treat people equally. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that if one person is coming on stream over and over again, are we doing a disservice to other people?
Which I think you are. So I think I shouldn't come on stream over and over again with you every week.
Yeah.
I really don't like this one as well, because I see it from both sides. Dr. K is producing a media product, and through the weeks talking to Reckful, it kind of became the Reckful show a little bit. You know, Reckful's got a specific audience. He's reached that audience. It's time to broaden the horizons again. The media product, the Dr. K, you know, media product, can't be the Reckful show every week. Absolutely. But he did say, let's do 6 weeks of it. It was his suggestion. You know, Dr. K set that. It's one, I do this myself sometimes. I'm sure we've all done it. A bit of over-promising and under-delivering. A bit of like, oh no, that would be lovely. Oh, we'll do that for your birthday. And like, why don't I get this? I'll go and get you some thing and flowers. And then like, it rolls on, oh, I didn't get the flowers. And like, do you know what? Like, this is quite a big event to organise. Why did I say I was going to do that? You know, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so there's an element of that in it, isn't there? And Dr. K is now having to rein things back and say, look, for my media product, I need to be more broad, do this thing. He's setting those boundaries of his media product. Byron is obviously disappointed because he was getting, like, for Byron, on the other side of this, in Byron's life, he's getting what he was looking for, therapy and help and, you know, mental health support. Things are looking better for himself and his life. And now that thing is now stopped. We're not friends anymore. I have to go about my business. Sorry. That feels like that to Byron. That might not be exactly what it is, but that's how it feels to Byron, I guess. Which is a great shame, isn't it? But what I was going to say is that Byron accepts, the one thing he speaks up about there is that he thinks, no, absolutely, other people should, you know, I shouldn't dominate, other people should get help as well. He agrees with those principles because Byron is noble and also in a position of low self-esteem. So he's not valuing himself. And what he might be internally really thinking is, you know what, I do agree that those people need help. I do agree. I mean, this is the case with mental health. I gave up my place on the NHS mental health therapy because I understand there's a massive waiting list. I got all the way through the what do I say? It's not a diagnosis, but it's a you go to the first thing and they assess you. I got through the assessments. I got to the bit where I was in the room with the therapist. They did a couple of bits of talking with them for a couple of sessions. And then I said, you know what? It's been so long that it took to get me into this room, that I've improved myself over that year that it took to get me into this room. I don't feel I need this as much now as other people do. I'm happy to just give it to somebody else. I'm not coming anymore. Thanks, but no thanks. That is in part noble of me, but it's also in part born of a sense of low self-esteem that somebody else deserves this more than me. But actually, we all deserve it. It's just there's not enough spaces on the waiting list because they should have more spaces. They should have more help. We all deserve it. You know, if you break your leg, you don't say, oh, well, your leg's more broken than mine. You get in the ambulance first. You're like, just get me in the chuffing ambulance. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's equally as important as everyone else. We all are. That's true. So Byron is being both noble but being self-deprecating in this. And sort of, actually, I think he really does want more out of this. He sees the rock and the hard place. Dr. K must go ahead and do this other stuff. So he's not going to be mean to Dr. K about it, but also he feels let down. I think that's fair, isn't it? I think it's fair to say he feels let down. And maybe whatever's been talked about off camera, he's here to represent and to back up Dr. K and say, no, this is fine. But his body language says something different.
Yeah. So I think, and so I think that too, for me, feels like it's closer to a doctor-patient relationship, which I think becomes really complicated if you're kind of working with someone week after week, you know? And I think the other thing that we expressed is that, like, so I want to be Reckful's friend.
Look at him. He's doing that with his... I think this, to Byron, this seems like a rejection. It's almost like Byron's getting dumped. It's like yesterday we were going out, you know, we just made boyfriend and boyfriend and, you know, you were going to be my best friend forever. And today you can't be that person for me. And not only that, I've internalized the idea that I need that to progress. I felt what you were doing in my life was, I mean, this is the way you feel when you break up with someone and you get dumped, isn't it? This is the way you feel when you get dumped, is you were the source of my happiness. You are telling me you don't like me anymore and we can't be happy together. Good for you. And I commend you on your forthright, you know, behaviour, and go ahead and live a good life, and I'm not going to be mean to you for that. You know, that's fine. But on my end, understand that I feel crushed. I feel like I've just lost everything all at once again. And that where hope springs from reaffirmation of positivity. The more good things happen, the more you feel good things are going to happen. And if you're in a position where you believe and internalize these negativities, and, you know, Reckful, it's so strange as well I'm saying this. He's in a lovely apartment with lovely stuff and he's done well for himself in his life. He's got loads of people in the chat, you know. Something more that you can't buy or touch or earn through subscriber numbers, you know, something more esoteric, like, you know, relationship stability, whatever it is. He looks like he's been let down here, and I feel bad for him. I wish it could have been just, you know, sorted out in a different way. But on the other side of the coin, when you're talking about this, this is what they're critiquing Dr. K for. Dr. K's trying his hardest to do the right thing by the ethics. I think Dr. K is in a very rock and hard place as well. I don't know how it all, plays out. There were conversations we're not party to off camera even after this. So I don't know if he, maintained whichever viewpoint, but certainly it's interesting to talk about, isn't it?
Right. So, but if
it's something eternal. You couldn't see it yet. Don't worry. I've talked to therapy people, and I've done stuff that has helped me, so I don't need to take up that space in the system. I'm happy with my decision. If you try to be friends with everyone, you get about half a second a person. Absolutely. Have you seen Asmongold's chat? I can't read anything as it flies past. He doesn't even try and be friends with everyone, so there's an indication of it. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with the person. I agree with it. It's maybe a missed opportunity here to do. This is an interesting concept, actually. A really interesting concept. Dr. K does broad work in a broad context online, but this was an opportunity to do something more specific. He made a choice. I don't know, now in hindsight, which was more valuable. Don't know how many millions of people he's helping today versus the one person that we love that's missing. You can't make value judgments on people like that. That's not how it works. They're just decisions. They're just choices. They're just, we've all got the benefit of hindsight, but, you could be looking at this and saying, Dr. K set up this whole thing on the internet and then he went off with Reckful. We never saw him again. And all these people ended up bereft of advice on the internet and didn't get any help and they committed suicide. I mean, you can't decide ifs and buts and pots and pans, what have you. It's just the way it is.
If I'm your friend, then can I be your doctor? Do I want to be your doctor? Do I want to be your friend? And I think the reason that this kind of relates to Reckful is because I think he's a very warm, open, and caring person, and also tangles up his relationships with people. And
that's a bit harsh in a way. Like, it's a bit fair. He's saying you're very sensitive. He's saying all the positives, but then he's finishing with that, not a negative. It feels like they've had an argument in a way. It feels like they might have had an argument. Maybe Reckful said to him, I can't believe you're doing this, whatever. I don't know. Feels like they're not quite on the same page. But saying that he tangles up his feelings is true. But also, that's deflecting the blame of any liability on Dr. K's part. I wonder if he's talked to... I also wonder if Dr. K has a lawyer or someone with a legal eye, a friend who's in the legal profession just like I was saying earlier, if you feel a bit hurty, you call your friend the nurse and they give you a recommendation to go to the doctor and stop wasting their time. But maybe he's got a legal counsel of some description, not an official. Maybe he just knows someone who's... and they've looked at his last broadcast and said, hey, you're trading that fine line on the wrong side there. You said you'd be his friend on the internet. You said that. You could end up getting sued here. Rein it in. Maybe that's a pressure on Dr. K as well. We don't know.
And it's something that I actually do too. So I tend to tangle up relationships with people. I tend to not see things in terms of black and white. And that's the reason I started... Sure. That's part of the reason I started streaming anyway, because
And now Byron decides... I'm doing I've inadvertently slipped into body language analysis, but now what happens is Dr. K continues. Byron's heard this before, which is why he gets up and walks away. It's also an indication that it's not something he wants to hear, because he's got up and walked away from it. But I believe Byron's heard this before. This is what they've been saying about, before. Dr. K is now explaining it to the audience. Byron is required here to be part of this conversation to explain it to the audience, but doesn't appear to want to be part of this explaining it to the audience. It doesn't feel like it's... like this message has his blessing, if that makes sense.
No one talks about feeling like, no therapist or psychiatrist has come live on stream to talk to people about mental health or their feelings. Or maybe it does happen and I just haven't heard of it. But I think that's a little bit unorthodox.
Yes, I was crying.
I said my piece.
He was saying that he wanted to be there for me for the next 2 years and that but
bit of an edit there again. Bit of an edit there again. I think they edit out the bit that makes Dr. K look good, where he explains these exact ethical dilemmas and, you know, makes some clear lines. I think they edit out the bit where he looks good.
But the problem is that he kind of said it in a flurry of emotion. I don't know if flurry is a good word. While streaming, he was getting emotional himself, and he wanted to be there for me. So he said it, but he hadn't actually thought it through and what that entails. Because he is not a licensed therapist in Texas, and just a lot of things, you know. Because you'd have to live in Texas to be my therapist in Texas. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So we also did talk about, you know, whether you want me to be your actual therapist and what that would entail. And the other thing is that bit of research, which is important to remember, is the research on people on BPD. It's 2 years.
Before we get into that little bit of research that he clarifies, I think it's important here that obviously they did talk about whether he wanted to be his therapist, which is interesting because the day before he said, or not the day, you know, edited, isn't it? Edited, but the last bit, he said, I'm going to be your friend, not your therapist. And we said, that's noble. Well, why then are they saying, are you going to be my therapist or not in the conversation? Obviously, Reckful said, you know, you've offered me that. Does that mean you're not my therapist? Does that mean we can't do this therapy thing? Because that's the bit that I'm really getting a lot of out of. So then they've had this, and I think Dr. K's kind of tried to put him off because Dr. K's got a position that he wants to maintain of being in some way neither friend nor therapist, it seems. I don't know. Of being online conversational Dr. K. I think maybe this is difficult as well because maybe you can, with some, how do I explain this? With some personalities, you could say, I'll be Dr. K online and we can be friends offline and I won't be Dr. K, we'll just be friends. You know, if I was friends with Hulk Hogan, for example, when we were online, Hulk Hogan would be going, oh, I'm going to give you a big headlock and I'm going to stuff my fist in your... Don't ask where I'm going to stuff my fist, you... Look, Hulk Hogan would be doing his thing, wouldn't he? He'd be acting in character. And I'd be playing along with that because I'm his mate. And I'm like, oh, you Hulk Hogan, you, hey, Hulk Hogan. And then off camera, when we go to the restaurant, I'll be like, right, mate, so what do you want for dinner? And he'd be like, I'll just have the ribs. And I'll be like, you sure you want ribs? You could go vegan, mate. And he'd be like, oh, I don't know. And like, you know, it's normal. We'd understand the difference in context in act and personality and role. But because here, Dr. K is Harvard educated, medical professional, is online as Dr. K, the not a therapist doing this thing. If you are then friends outside of that, or therapy or whatever outside of that, like, not only is that like so close to what that is online, it's hard to see the difference. He's not doing a big act online, he's being more real, and it's hard to see the difference. But there's an ethical aspect to that difference. It's not just does it matter if Hulk Hogan acts like Hulk Hogan when he's choosing his ribs. It doesn't matter when he's choosing. It does matter when you're friends like this. So that's really difficult as well, isn't it? I ran out of my brain now. I had more thoughts, but because of my words.
Years of someone who's actually a romantic partner. So it's unclear whether a friend.
So yeah, I need to get in a relationship with a girl for 2 years and have it actually work out, and that might cure my BPD. With
and so.
No, sorry, we're clarifying up there that little point about
and what that entails, because he is not a licensed therapist in Texas, and just a lot of things. You know, because you'd have to live in Texas.
See, it almost seems like Dr. K said, look, if I was going to be your like he said, I want you to be my therapist. And Dr. K said, if I was going to be your therapist, I would have to live in Texas. I'd have to be licensed in Texas. And so he's like putting up barriers, putting up hurdles why he can't do it. Even if that's what you want, I can't do it. Maybe he's trying to refer him to someone else. Maybe he has done the right, you know, we don't know that he hasn't tried to refer him to someone else. It would seem logical that he would. So I'm not saying Dr. K is doing the wrong thing here. There is no right and wrong. You either are his friend or you're his therapist, and either way, it's not right or wrong, is it? I chose to go with my heart because he made an impassioned speech in a flurry of emotion, which I like. I'm down with that. If he wants to go the other way, the thing that is wrong is to flip between the two or not be clear or to change stances midway. That's the difficulty, because if you're going to rescind that and go back on it, it's going to confuse Byron even more. But then again, you are a human. So it's okay to make a mistake. You know, especially if you're not actually doing therapy.
To be my therapist in Texas, is that how it works?
Yeah, so we also did talk about, whether you want me to be your actual therapist and what that would entail. And the other thing is that bit of research, which is important to remember.
So then he goes on to this research, which is like, it's almost, I believe, Dr. K as well, I believe that this is the sticking point. You know, this is the problem point, is the therapy. Can I be your therapist?
Be my therapist in Texas, is that how it works?
Yeah, so we...
But once Byron has outlined those problems, Dr. K is listening to him outline the problems, and he's saying, look,
this has come live on stream.
I don't know if flurry is a good word. Just a lot of things, because you'd have to live in Texas to be my therapist in Texas. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so we also did talk about whether you want me to be your actual therapist and what that would entail. And the other thing is that bit of research, which is important to...
He clarifies that we talked about that. Byron has repeated back to him those points, so he knows that he's got that message, but he doesn't want to linger on that. So he goes, and we're also going to talk about that BPD thing, which we will talk about in just a second. But I wanted to make this point about that, which is that I believe it's a conversation they've had before. They've come to some resolution after some maybe disagreement or whatever. They've come to some sort of resolution. So he doesn't want to dawdle over that argument. He doesn't want to bring it up again. He doesn't want to cause a conflict on stream. He just wants to say it as it is, have Reckful agree, and then move on. And the thing he moves on to happens to be this thing clarifying again, maybe from a legal position, that he's definitely not saying that you've got borderline personality disorder, but maybe it's also another arm of hope. If I can't be there and be your therapist, you can still have someone in your life. That thing that I offered you, someone else can offer it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist because I don't offer it. There is still hope. I kind of think he kind of balances it out with that a bit. But again, this is just a very short clip of a very long conversation that I'm analysing and deep analysing now.
Therapist and what that would entail. And the other thing is that bit of research, which is important to remember, is the research on people on BPD. It's 2 years of someone who's actually a romantic partner. So it's unclear whether a friend...
So yeah, I need to get in a relationship with a girl for 2 years and have it actually work out. And that might cure my BPD with...
Yeah, and so this is what we also kind of talked about. I don't know if you remember, but like it's not about curing and the relationship working out. It's about developing.
I have trouble not thinking in these terms. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
he's trying to say, look, don't think in these terms of diagnoses and stuff. But Reckful did just say it again, my BPD, and he didn't say not your BPD. Maybe he said it to him a number of times. Not talking in these terms. We're not even going to talk about the terms of BPD. We just want to get you in a damn relationship with someone who's healthy. That's going to be good for you, but Reckful keeps trying to bring it to this therapy level because he feels that's what he needs and that's what he's been getting out of this. It's a very difficult unthreading of some quite complicated threaded knitted. It's like the two of them in their conversation have become entangled in some way, and now Dr. K appears to be trying to disentangle some of those things. I do see this not as a negligence on Dr. K's part, but as just a thing that happened in the confusing world of evolving mental health support online. In this particular case, you got a very complex person who very sensitive and developed a bit of a friendship with, and then we had to start drawing some really clear lines because we tried drawing the lines at the start, but it got into this despite the clear lines. So now we're going to redraw those clear lines, and I think it was in some way for everything that I said about Dr. K came closest to saving Byron. I still think Dr. K is underestimating Byron here. He sees that he's unhappy with it, but I don't think he realises the depth of Byron's sadness in this. And I also think he still maintains that he could offer him some solace and hope. I still think he believes that he can offer him those positive things. Maybe he's tried to refer him to someone else. Maybe he thinks he's going to, meet a girl or whatever it is, but... the body language in Byron here is not very positive, is it?
So exactly. So that's what we need to change, right? So you think about things in terms of working out or not working out. I think we had talked about, so what's going to happen as you enter relationships is that there are going to be stressful parts and not stressful parts. And if there is a stressful part where...
Byron actually gets up here, and I can't believe I'm doing this in such a deep body language analysis. I didn't realise I was going to do this, but I have to instinctively. Byron actually gets up here because it's almost an insult to Dr. K here. Look, you're not my therapist. You said you're not going to be my therapist. I wanted you to be, and you're not going to be. So now you're going to start saying therapy words. Fuck you. I'm not even listening to this. It's not for me. Obviously, is it? These words aren't for me. You've clarified with me. These words are for the audience. This is you doing your bit for the audience. I'm off. I'm going to get my blanket or whatever. It's like, that's the way I read that.
Your some scar of abandonment gets triggered, then you may act in a different kind of way, and we can talk about that. Like, I'm curious about, you know, your prior relationships and things like that. And as that some scar activates, it causes you to do things that you normally wouldn't do.
Or maybe he just wanted to make his bed.
And those are kind of driven by that fear of abandonment.
The unprocessed trauma.
Unprocessed trauma. Great way to put it. Right? So some of the trauma of losing your brother, one brother and then another brother, like you're terrified that like you'll lose someone else, and so you try to.
My other brother's still alive. He just means he's not around.
Yeah. And so I think what we need to help you do is like use meditation or psilocybin or however you want to, but to gain perspective on those moments and essentially ride out those emotions so that you can like not do something that negatively impacts the relationship. So we need to help.
Now, my mind is stuck on certain things right now.
Yeah, tell me.
So I'm stuck on. I like to get these things solved, I guess. I don't like to be in the tension so much.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm in the tension of, is he going to be my therapist or are we going to be friends? Because he said if he's my therapist, we can never travel together anywhere. Like, it changes how it is. So I was thinking it'd be cool to go to Japan with Dr.
This is difficult for me because obviously Dr. K, I feel like, again, we can never travel anywhere if I'm your therapist. He's like saying something that is true. He's making sure that Byron is clear on the lines, but he's selling it, isn't he? He's selling or negatively selling it. He's throwing up another hurdle. There's a third one. I can't do it because I don't live in Texas. Well, Byron probably said, well, you can move to Texas. That's not a problem. I could buy you a house. I'll come and live next. I can't do it because I'm not a licensed therapist in Texas. All right. And besides, if I did do your therapy, then we wouldn't be able to travel anywhere together because I'd be, it feels like he's negatively sold the. It feels like he doesn't want to be his therapist. He wants to be his friend, but Byron wants him to be his therapist, despite the offer of friendship that we said was noble and heroic or whatever. Despite that, it feels like Byron wants a therapist and wants this man to be his therapist, and he's being rejected. And that Dr. K has seeded those ideas through this conversation. It's really difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult. I maintain, in a way, that we are highlighting this one moment, this thing that happened over maybe a 24-hour period. Their conversations. 36 hours, I don't know how many hours. We're highlighting it, going deep into a little moment. So I think it's very unfair to put Dr. K on the rack for that and to say, you've been negligent. He's been pushed. Dr. K himself has been pushed and pulled across ethical dilemma. He's tried to do his best in terms of what he thinks deep down can help this person the most. He's also got his professional online career in terms of growing the brand of Dr. K and doing the work for all those reasons. But also he's got those lawyers, the risk assessment going off in his head. There's such a lot to balance, isn't there? Oh, there's my battery. I've got another one. Battery exhausted. We've got one more. Don't worry about that. It's a good indication I should get on with the chuffing stream, isn't it? Instead of chuffing on a load of chuff. Chuffing and chuffing and chuffing and chuffing, chuffing, and get that in focus, you. Get that in focus. That's out of focus. Put it in focus. You. Who's you? Me. It's just me. I do everything around here. So yeah. I don't like it. I don't like seeing Byron unhappy. But I do understand that what Dr. K has done is neither good nor bad in a way. It feels a bit when he's pushing him out of therapy. But maybe he can't offer him the therapy. So maybe he doesn't want him to choose the therapy option because maybe he can't offer it him. So, he's trying to, a bit like, a child, oh, can I have this? No, you can't. But, this is good and this is good and this is, trying to look at the positive. I don't know. Maybe it's something that Dr. K's got to have going on in his brain. Maybe Byron's trying to manipulate Dr. K as well, like it says in chat, maybe it goes both ways. We don't know everything as well because we don't know what they said off camera, do we? So it's just inference at this stage, and we're just trying to raise the discussion because it's an interesting discussion about informed consent. And bottom line, we care about and love both people in this context, so we're not trying to sling any mud. Just trying to hopefully learn something from it, I guess.
Okay, that sounds nice. Yeah, that would feel nice.
Yeah.
Just see how he experiences things and have fun. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it's good.
Actually, I really want a friend, but then I'm thinking longer term. I'll have friends. So what I need is a therapist, maybe.
Yeah, so I think rather than resolve that issue, Reckful, I think the important thing is that you said something really, really beautiful, right? Which is that you do not like the tension.
It's a big problem in my life, yeah. I don't like the tension. Every time I'm around a girl, I like to just have it resolved right away that, okay, this is not going to be anything romantic for sure, or it might. I just want to get it out of the way.
Is it okay if we talk about that?
Horrible animal flesh burning in a pan. Obviously, they don't know about me, do they? If they want to advertise on my
obligation to his or her patient, not to reveal the patient's personal or health information without that patient's explicit, informed permission.
Right, now we're on to confidentiality. So that wraps up the section of informed consent at that almost cliffhanger, which is a bit of a weird one. But what I instinctively feel here is that what Byron was asking for from Dr. K in this situation, and the reason he related it to romantic. 1, 2, Chuffy. Let me just check I'm not going. 1, 2, Chuffy. Let me just check I'm not going. I'm not. I just got paranoid about it now. The Reckful presents an A-B black-white choice here. The tension I'm having, the problem I have, Dr. K, is that we need to resolve whether you're my therapist or my friend. And he's quoting his own internal dialogue of, I want a friend, but I also want a therapist. I don't know. He's conflicted. So what he appears to be doing, almost a bit like he says, it's a bit like when I talk to a girl, I want it to be resolved right away. Are you interested in me? Are we going to have a romantic relationship or not? I don't want to play the game and the dance. It confuses me. I don't want to have to, go on 3 dates only to find out that you don't really like me. And Reckful's been in these positions with people who are using him for clout, or, oh, are you doing something interesting on stream? I'll sit here and be your friend while you're interesting on stream. And then, later on, I'm not here for you in the ways you need me because, I didn't have a real relationship with you, really. I was just here for a bit of clout. He suffered that sort of thing. So he'd like to be a bit more clear down. I get that. I can almost perceive him saying to a girl, are we going to be going out? Are you interested in me romantically or not? Let's not. I can't do the confusion. And you get an answer and you deal with it. Yeah. But it's the tension he doesn't like. So he's categorically said that to Dr. K. It's almost like saying to Dr. K, can you give me an answer? Are you dumping me here or not? It's almost like a bromance in a way, isn't it? It's almost like there's a romantic element to it and stuff, but it's almost like Reckful saying to him, can you categorize this, categorically state for me, are you my friend or will you be my therapist? And Dr. K, I feel, I don't know, we don't see the rest of it, we don't know, but I feel instinctively like I feel like he has done. Like he said, I want to be your friend in that previous broadcast. But then he's had to rescind it. That's confused Reckful a bit. But I'm not going to be your therapist is also quite clearly a message. So we don't know if that was clarified for Byron or not. But we see him asking for that clarification. And also, because he's having that internal dialogue, not being certain himself of which one, either way for Byron, could be a win and a loss. There's pros and cons both ways. So he doesn't want to have to make that decision. He can't make that decision himself because Dr. K is basically making it in ways, but it doesn't appear to be that clear. I don't know. I feel good and bad about that in ways. It's a strange way to leave it, isn't it? But then isn't that the story of this? A strange way to leave it. If you want to see more of Reckful's life, have a look at Reckful reacting to the Reckful documentary chat. If you want to subscribe to me, I'm Ganji Kid. Hit me up on YouTube, subscribe to me. I've only got 52 subscribers. We need to hit 1,000 by the end of this year. I don't know, arbitrary timeline. I want 1,000, then I'm going to want 10,000, then I'm going to want 100. So I'm never going to, it's never going to be enough for me. But, come on now. Hit me up on the YouTube. If you're thinking about suicide, obviously, from everything we discussed, it's difficult, isn't it? But talk to somebody. 988 Lifeline, Samaritans 116123 for free in the UK. We do Mental Health Monday every Monday, 8 p.m. GMT, and we'll be back with more Healthy Gamer and Reckful to look at confidentiality, bartering and conflicts of interest, the rest of this story as presented, and finally we'll be looking at the response video from Dr. K. So we've got a lot of content there for Mental Health Monday upcoming. So you be good, my little puckos. It's been good having you here. It's been good being with you. I'll be back on YouTube again, hopefully tomorrow, YouTube streaming in the daytime. We appear to be talking about conspiracy theories at the moment, but I'm a variety streamer, so you never know. That's what's going on. You be good. You are good. The fact that we're here talking about this is important in a way. The fact that you're there thinking about it is good. You know, spreading out these positive energy vibes, these important conversations. It can be just as important the conversation you have on the dog walk with someone you meet or someone at the bus stop. So bear that in mind. Be good, my little puckos. I know you're good. That's why you're here being good.
You right born to kill on your helmet and you wear a peace button. Was that supposed to be some kind of sick joke?
I think I was trying to suggest something about the duality of man, sir.
That's the sounds of a Japanese marching band screaming, and Private Joker from Full Metal Jacket, because I've been bought a cup of coffee for my troubles. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I got nothing. You're supposed to write things here, because I come over here and write things. Fine. You don't have to write anything. You can just buy me the coffee. That's fine. Just throw me the money. And you be good, my little puckos. We'll be back with more. I've got more in store. I told you before I'd come back with more. You be good. Check out all the other content. I think I've said everything. My brain's starting to say things on repeat. So I will stop stream and attend to the little doggy. Oh, the little doggy. Somebody needs to be attended to by his daddy. So you be good, and I'll see you anon.